Welcome to the Careers by Jen podcast, episode 194. Today on the podcast, Jen interviews Lisa Foster about what Lisa calls shining from your original design. My original design was scribbled on the back of a napkin in the diner of a truck stop just outside of Topeka, Kansas. Every time I try shining, there's this smell of grease.
You're listening to the Careers by Jen podcast with me, Jen Swanson, the podcast that helps you to get the job, love your work, and advance your career. Cracking the code, how to shine from your original design. How do you shine when stuff happens to you and you don't feel like you're even able to? That is what my guest, Lisa Foster, specializes in. And on today's show, we talk about how to find that inner confidence and that strength to be able to shine from your original design or from who you are, rather than what happened or didn't happen to you. My first question for Lisa is, what if you don't believe you can shine? Find out her answer right after this.
Are you procrastinating? Do you want to start a job search but aren't quite sure where to begin? Is it all just a little overwhelming? At Careers by Jen, we have a 5-day Jumpstart Your Job Search Challenge to help you get unstuck and move toward finding your dream job. Every day for 5 days, you'll receive an email to your inbox that asks you to complete one task. Every task you complete moves you closer toward your goal. The best part about this challenge is that it's absolutely free. Come over to careersbyjen.com and you'll see the 5-day Jumpstart Your Job Search Challenge on the right-hand side of the screen. Click on the image of Jen, sign up with your email address, and you'll be 5 days closer to reaching your goal. Why wait when you can get busy? Visit careersbyjen.com after this podcast.
Lisa Foster, I'm going to begin with this question. What if you don't believe that you can shine?
Oh, wow. I love that question. Maybe. I have to think I have to sit with it for a second. Say it again. What if you believe
What if you don't believe that you can shine?
Well, I would say if you don't believe that you can shine, I'd like to talk to you. That's the first thing I'd like to say. I think a lot of the clients that I actually work with, and including my own journey, have at one point believed that we could not, or we don't get to shine. I've worked with a lot of people who've come out of sexual violation in their past. And as someone who has experienced that myself, it is often the traumas of life that end up becoming the shame stories that we carry. And as we go through our own heroic journeys, we get the opportunity to reclaim the treasure of our true selves. And so I think that's really what I would say, is that at some point we get the opportunity and the invitation to be our own heroes. And with the right support and with the right resources, we really can begin that journey to reclaim our confidence, our own sense of well-being in the world, and our right as humans on the planet to be fully expressed and to shine our brightest.
And one of the messages that I try to impart in all the work that I do is the message that you are enough. And I know that it's so hard for people to hear that sometimes. And I just wonder, is that a cultural thing? Is it a societal thing? Why, you look at little children and how they're so excited to show you all their brilliance and all the things they can do. And then they get older and older and older, and that, for some, that disappears. And what is that?
Yeah, I actually talk about that in my work, about this idea of what was the first dream in your heart as a child, and this concept of being big on the inside and playing big on the outside. And I think that life does happen as little kiddos. And as we're figuring out how to be safe and loved in the world, that initial response to life of, I want to be a firefighter or a ballerina or a rock star or whatever with no limits, that gets lost because we shine our light, and then whatever gets reflected back at us, I think that's what begins to shrink our idea of what's acceptable and our idea about who we are.
I can't remember where I heard it, but I heard that a lot of people think they can't sing. And it goes back to them being told as young people, or maybe not even as young people, that they didn't sound good. And so they self-edit and they decide that they can't sing. And I've heard voice teachers say that's ridiculous. Unless you're tone deaf, everyone can sing.
That is so funny because I am one of those. I had believed my whole life that I couldn't sing. And I'm actually now in a relationship with a musician and who's been in bands and who sings. And he has said so many times, you have such a great voice. But it's so hard for me to reconcile that with the storyline that I've carried internally my whole life.
I'm somewhat the same way, and the work that I do in one of my areas, I'm often finding myself leading the singing. And so I've recently had to figure it out. And I can't read music. I can sort of figure it out. I've tried, but I do it by ear. But I sometimes have to get over myself and just do it, or else none of us are going to sing. And it says in the bulletin, we have to sing now.
I love it. The courage to sing, to show up authentically. Beautiful.
It's a good practice. So
it is. It's a good practice for the rest of life. And I love it because what you're doing is you're modeling for other people that, we really can show up and we can be, the acceptance begins with ourselves, first of all. And then we become a space for others to feel that kind of acceptance and to have the courage to take those risks.
So the acceptance begins with ourselves, but what if you are not believing what you think and instead you're believing what other people think?
Well, again, that has been a lifelong journey for me of understanding how much I've given my power away. And that is where, I know you're a coach, I'm a coach, the people that have come into my life at just the right time to reflect back to me, to mirror back to me a different message and a different opportunity, and to begin to provide some healing for those ideas and for that lack of acceptance. That is what has helped me be able to, over time, really and truly and deeply accept myself.
I know that I coach people often when they're going into a situation where they have to have a job interview, and sometimes it's like there's a wall up where they won't cross over that wall to claim what they're good at or to name what they're good at. And they can do it on paper in the resume, but sometimes it's a lot harder when you're trying to get them to not brag about themselves, but speak the truth about their skills. And I find that an interesting thing.
It really is. And actually in my work, I call that getting back our voice and choice. And our voice being, first of all, that internal sense. We talked about earlier about the acceptance, knowing who we are and knowing what we want. And then the choice being that bringing that out into the world. And there are so many mixed messages, depending on how we were raised, depending on what our life experience has been, that, wow, if I shine too bright, somehow there's not enough to go around, that scarcity mindset or that idea. And I certainly, having grown up in a home where my mom was a bit narcissistic, to say the least, and there were some of those dynamics, there has been a fear in my own life of, wow, if I really show up big, I'm being narcissistic. Or if I really shine, I will lose love.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Does that resonate with you at all? Have you ever had that experience or that fear of, wow, if I'm too big, other people will be jealous or they will be threatened and they will reject me?
Yeah, in some circles, yes. In some circles, absolutely. You want to not put out there what it is you're passionate about or put out there, what it is you're up to, because of the fear of what other people think. And one of my favorite quotes is, what other people think is none of your business.
I love that. Yep.
But that's hard.
It's so hard. And I have to say again, one of the kind of jovial, jokey things that I say is my mom sat me down on her knee and told me as a little child, they're all going to be jealous of you. And so I had as sort of, this construct or this template in my life that really I need to tone it down. And I work with a lot of clients. I hear that like, oh, I got to tone it down, especially as women, that sense of we can't be too big. We can't be too big in the workplace. We can't be, have too much of a voice or we're going to be in trouble.
What are the costs of toning it down?
Oh my goodness. The cost, the impact of toning it down is our own sense of self, I believe, our own sense of well-being in the world, our most vibrant relationships, and our greatest contributions. To name a few. To name just a few. I think the impact is massive, to be honest with you. And that's really why I feel like part of my calling on the planet is to create a space where people are free to shine. That there's more than enough room for all of us to show up and be expressed and contribute.
So how can a person who is listening to this, who is wanting to move ahead in their career, who wants to transition to a management position or wants to advance, but has those barriers up and is afraid to shine? We're titling this "Cracking the Code: How to Shine from Your Original Design." What would be one of the first things that person could do to move past the barriers that are holding them back?
Well, I think, in terms of the tools that I use and I offer to others, there's a couple of tools I use that are internal shift tools, I call them. One of which is the bridge to big, I refer to it as, because often what happens is we have circumstances that trigger what I call a slide to small. I don't know if you remember that game, Chutes and Ladders.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I see it this way, that something happens, a precipitating circumstance, and then we slide to being small thoughts. I'm a loser. I'll never make it. I'm not successful. I'm not attractive, that kind of thing. And then we end up playing small as a result. And so one of the things that I teach clients is what's called the bridge to big. And so there's actually a script when we begin to notice and shine a compassionate light on those moments that we are turning a circumstance into a storyline that has a slide to small. The script goes like this: I see you, small thoughts. And we actually call them out. That's all you are, small little thoughts. You aren't me. You aren't the truth. And now I'm going to exchange you for the possibility of being as big as I truly am on the inside. And this is where clients have come up with a being big list. I am beautiful. I am free. I'm abundant. I'm a contributor. I am lovable. And once a person, including myself, I use this tool, once we feel that shift back to big internally, then this final statement. And now from here, what's one new action I can take that reflects my state of being big on the inside? And then we allow for whatever organically comes up in the moment as the next action, because its impetus is from the state of being big on the inside. And so from that place, that's when, if I was starting to pick a fight with someone, with my partner, with a friend, maybe I don't need to do that anymore because I'm back to big. Or if I'm at work, we're talking about the career and work. It may be that, well, I think I can have that conversation with my boss and tell them that I'm interested in that promotion because I'm big on the inside. And the other piece of that would be adding an unattachment to the outcome, right? So having those internal shifts and then being unattached to the outcome and trusting that, okay, whatever this journey is, if I come from big and I come in the heart of contribution, I really can make a difference. So, yeah.
I was just going to say, but sometimes we're so attached to the outcome. We want to fix it.
Oh,
we want to fix it now.
I know. Well, that is part of, again, the That is a hard one, and it is so very powerful. I call it the power punch. When I can show up in my fullness, I'm big on the inside, and when I'm big on the inside, it's about contributing to the person in front of me. And that's the difference. And then when I'm about that, and when I'm in that space, to be able to go, okay, with open hands, I offer my contribution. And if it doesn't land over there on the other side, if my boss or my coworker doesn't quite get it, that is okay. I've just been in a contributing an act of love, if you will, and there are other opportunities to contribute potentially. So that's, but I want to go back to that question for a second, because I think that internal shift is very powerful. And then I do work with tools, like we've talked about the assessment tools of StrengthsFinder, Myers-Briggs, and the Enneagram, that provide in language another source of tools that allow us to be confident and capture in language what we can contribute.
And the tools are important because sometimes just the language, the words, the motivation. I heard something interesting the other day about motivation not being as helpful as it could be, and habit is far more powerful in the end than motivation, which is interesting. But sometimes we need different resources. I think multiple different ways of enforcing the concepts that you're teaching and that you're talking about are useful. So using the tools and using the different exercises would be good. What brought you to this in the first place? What brought you to doing this work?
Well, of course, my own journey, right? Like most transformational agents in the world, we've experienced our own transformation. And so, yeah, for me, I grew up in a home where I experienced abuse. I experienced child sexual abuse and emotional abuse. And when I got out of that home, got married at 21, so pretty young, and got out of the home and began my own, what I call now a heroic journey, my own healing journey. And as I did so, I realized that, I was going to fight for my capacity to be whole. I was going to really the fire that burned in me was, I will be whole, no matter what it takes or how long it takes. Now, mind you, now looking back, I see that I already was whole. And that there was just a gap between my experience of my wholeness. But at the time, I felt very broken coming out of that level of abuse. But to make a long story short, it took a couple of decades and a lot of healing work and a lot of other life experiences, starting a nonprofit, working in nonprofits, and having another business in which I helped with the business partner, helped small business owners work through their own limiting beliefs to find their unique contribution in work. And while I was doing that work, I started to share my own story about child sexual abuse. And in these groups of small business owners, they would come out of the woodwork and say, I too have had that experience. And so a few years ago, I had worked through enough of my own limiting beliefs that I was ready to start Paraloom, and specifically with the vision of empowering women who'd experienced sexual violation to not just survive, but to thrive. And as I did that work, and as I started to work with different tools, including assessment tools, I began to see, and I began to be asked to do that work with people outside of the realm of thriving in the aftermath of sexual violation. And so that's how this incredible cracking the code and shining from your original design program with individuals, couples, families, and teams in which I help them apply their assessment results to create lives they love, and personally and professionally. That's how that has taken off. So I'm all about thriving and shining without shame, no matter what our past has been.
I want to ask you about the impact of the Me Too movement, but we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll pick it up there.
You've updated your resume, you've sent it out, and you've been selected for an interview. Congratulations. And now you want to get ready, really ready. This is where Careers by Jen can help. We have a comprehensive online course called How to Ace a Job Interview When You Haven't Interviewed in a Long Time. This video-based course is jam-packed with information, advice, and exercises to help you get completely prepared to walk into an interview situation with confidence. From exactly what to prepare in advance, to how to answer common questions, to what questions you might ask the interviewer, and so much more, this course is designed to get you ready. Visit careersbyjen.com and click on Training Resources to see the curriculum, preview a couple of the introductory lessons, and see what others who have taken the course are saying about it. Visit careersbyjen.com and get ready to ace your next interview.
So I am speaking with Lisa Foster, and our topic today is cracking the code, how to shine from your original design. And Lisa, I want to ask you about the Me Too movement, because obviously you started your work before that was a thing. And I'm just wondering what that has done to the work that you are doing.
Well, what it has done is it's just created an even more open conversation about the reality of sexual violation. And so though in the Denver community, we had started having monthly events where we were talking about sexual violation in a very different way, celebrating the triumph of the human spirit and the aftermath of violation, to be able to have such, just the movement really take over in the media has been very, very powerful and profound for the whole concept of reclaiming voice and choice, and for the people that have so courageously come forward. It's been very inspiring.
And it seems to be a little bit more easy in a way. Not easy. Nothing's ever easy about transformational work, but it seems to be okay to speak more freely now.
Yes, and that is, I think, one of the greatest gifts the Me Too movement has given us, is this idea in the wider culture of the magnitude of the problem. And so that when an individual voice courageously speaks up, and it still, as you mentioned, it still takes tremendous courage to speak up, whether it's just to a friend or a family member or in a workplace. But to feel like we're not alone in speaking up, that is so powerful.
Absolutely. So how, if it's not in the context of Me Too, but if it's in the context of just somebody with low self-esteem, someone who has had some experiences in their past where they don't feel that they can shine, how do they not feel alone in all of this?
Well, I think the key when we're dealing with the shame message of I am alone, and again, I can relate. One of the keys, and it's a challenging one, I know, when we're in that space, is to open our mouth to someone who's safe, to share our story, to find a place of connection, no matter what that story is, because it is in the normal, it is in the community, it is in the having of it is a compassionate witness that calls forth our story and creates a safe space for it. That is what begins the healing journey, the healing process, I believe, those first few conversations. And so I would say the power of that, whether that is someone that you pay, because you find a coach, you find a therapist, you find, even a bodywork professional that you can share a bit of your story with. I think that can make a difference. And over time, having relationships that are more intimate, where people are talking this way to one another, what we find is it's part of the human condition. I don't think anyone gets away with being on this planet for long without at least at one point feeling alone and misunderstood and like they're the only one. And that is one of the biggest characteristics of shame.
Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with Brene Brown's work on the subject.
Yes, love her.
Yeah. It's wonderful that people are talking about shame in a more open way now as well, and interesting to see where that all ends up.
Absolutely. I know. I'm very grateful that we are in the 21st century and there is so much more openness, and that younger generations are growing up in a context in which being authentic, being vulnerable, living without shame in the world is part of their birthright. And not that we're all experiencing it, but all the different movements of inclusion and diversity and all those things are so very important.
What are some of the results that you're seeing from the work that you do?
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, I have two main components to the work. I've mentioned them both. The Free to Shine program, some of the greatest results I've seen have been with women, like I said, in particular, who have experienced child sexual abuse or have experienced complex trauma, have had multiple abusers, and they had done years of recovery work, years of therapy, because I am not a therapist and my work is not for the beginning stages of the heroic journey. It really is for those who've done enough recovery work that they're ready to be in Play Big. And the coolest things that I've seen have been with folks that really did not love themselves, that did not see their value, that did not have a sense of the treasure that they are, and to see them shine, to see them show up in the world and start businesses and, start and be in relationships and be able to be healthy in relationships and to have their voice and choice and to speak publicly. I've had many, many women that have been through my work, especially when I was doing these free events in the community and I was interviewing some of my graduates of Free to Shine. But for them to speak up without any shame. I think of one woman in particular who was a friend of mine, and she said, I wasn't abused as a child, but I'd like to work with you. There's some things I want to do in my life, and I want to be free to shine. And then she ended up telling me about being raped in college.
Oh.
And she had never told anyone. That's not true. She had told folks, but what she hadn't told them was she had gone through a trial, if you will, at the school, and the student who had raped her had been found not guilty. And so she had carried the layered shame of that into her adult life. And to see her really unpack that and unpack the shame story that she had been carrying, because that's one of the things I do. I talk about the thing that goes bump in the night, which is the core shame message. And we come up with an antidote for it so that we're unstoppable in life. And so to see her integrate that story into her life, and be able to talk about it publicly, and then what has happened in her career and with her business since working with her has just been phenomenal. Because, my ideal client are women who are up to something and they don't want the pain of their past stopping them. So often we end up sabotaging or shrinking the fullest capacity of who we know ourselves to be because we've got a story that we don't want other people to know about, because we've got a shame message that we believe is the truth. And if it gets exposed, then that often that little child in us who created the shame message feels like we'll be destroyed.
It's fear too. A lot of fear.
Oh, yes. So much. And the thing is, there is a lot of really bad responses to people coming out about sexual violation. So, I mean, that storyline, that re-traumatization is as real as can be. I mean, even the stories that we're hearing now about the Catholic Church and which any of us who are in the conversation about child sexual abuse understand that this is like pandemic levels. But, it's the response is so often so painful. So it's understandable. We just sort of swallow our needs, swallow our shine, play a little smaller. So yeah, those are some of the results there. And then some of the other results I see in teams and couples, with the combining of the assessments and giving them real tangible tools on how to apply them and how to help each other shine brighter. That's been really fun. Seeing couples who already have a good foundation, but to be able to make the tiniest shifts because they have understanding now, to be able to no longer take personally what their partner does, massive, massive. So that's really fun. And then, of course, seeing leaders understand the people that they're leading and teams coming together and creating cultures of honor instead of judgment, because they actually see one another. And there's language around the superpowers that are in each other. That's been very rewarding as well to see that.
I love that the coming together and the shining is the result of it. I imagine that it's a long journey.
You mean in the aftermath of sexual violation?
Or of any kind of standing out to shine, that it's a process. It doesn't happen after one session. It doesn't happen after one course. It could take weeks, months, years to be able to feel like you belong.
Yes. Well, so part of my intention on the planet is to make that whole process a little more efficient because I don't think it has to take forever. I actually did a TEDx talk about this where I talked about the hero's journey and my own story of violation and how I don't think it needs to take 2 decades. I think when we can actually have those shifts, fairly quickly and in the right context, and especially as a collective, when we can begin to elevate our sense of who we are and who other people are, this can happen faster. And I agree that it is always a process, and it is always one of the things I do. I call it playful practice, my homework, that I give clients, and so I love that language because first of all, we're playing full out. And we're practicing. And that idea of it is a practice. And if every day I create an intention of showing up a little more authentically, of being willing to sit with my own greatness a little bit more, or my own capacity for good things to happen, I am expanding internally. And so, yes, it is a process, and I really hope that more and more people can partake in that process and be alongside one another in that process, which is why I love your podcast, that you really create a space for that. And really begin to take those big leaps that result in the world shining a little brighter for all of us.
If we all did our own work, what kind of
only
place
that could happen.
What kind of place would we be living in? Hey.
Yes, and if we could do it from a space of this goes back to your first question, but from a place of deep acceptance for where we're at today. The more that I do this work, the more I believe so strongly that transformation can only be born out of of true acceptance. We must be able to accept and no longer resist where we're at today in order to begin to transform, I believe.
And that resistance is tough. That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that's a tough one is our own blind spots, because we can't see what we don't see until we see it. And that's why I like the hero's journey, a simplified version of it, to be a template, because I love that first stage of awakening. There are so many areas right now today, I am sure, that I'm asleep in. And as I keep practicing and doing my work, I will continue to awaken to an area that I had been blind in. Now, I will warn your listeners, and they already know it, I'm sure, because they've experienced it, but every awakening is an ouch. It hurts.
Yep.
And so that's why I like, again, the hero's journey, because I want to create a template for folks, a lit path, so they can actually have the courage, so that I can have the courage to go, okay, what I'm being invited to in this awakening is transformation. And the reward of the transformation is my own internal expansion and my own capacity, once I've expanded internally, to be able to give more externally to the planet. But it's always a little bit of an ouch.
Or a big ouch, depending.
Or a big dang ouch. Let me tell you, there's those too, all the time.
So Lisa, if people want to know more about you and the programs that you offer, where can they find you?
I am at Paraloom.com, That is spelled PARILLUME.com.
Fabulous. And what's one last piece of advice you have for the Careers by Jen listener?
Oh my goodness. Okay. I'm being big on the inside. And so I just got one organic thought that came up that I'm just going to say. To your listeners, I would say my biggest piece of advice is to say yes. So when that awakening happens, even if it's an ouch, when you begin to see that invitation for being and playing bigger in your career, in your life, to courageously jump off the cliff and say yes and see what happens.
I just did a whole episode on saying yes, so this is perfect.
That's funny. Maybe I was channeling that.
Thank you so much for this conversation today.
Oh, thank you.
You've been listening to Careers by Jen with Jen Swanson. If you like what you heard, please share this. You know, if every single person listening today shared this episode with just one friend, our audience would be twice as big just like that. And the more people we can help with our content, the better. So help out a friend and help grow our audience by sharing this show with someone you know who would benefit from the content. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, and together we can make a difference. Until next time, take good care.